This is the first of two remarkable shows with Karen Gedney, an MD who wrote a very powerful account of her role as a prison doctor in one prison in Nevada. The title of this book was 30 Years Behind Bars. It was certainly an eye-opener for me. Well, the question is, why on earth did you become a prison doctor? How did you end up in that situation?
Well, I can certainly tell your audience that I never dreamed of going to prison and being a doctor when I was in my training, but I am what's known as a National Health Service Corps scholarship winner, which means that if you're sort of poor, you're academically doing well, and you apply for the scholarship, sometimes you can get a free ride to medical school, which happened to me back when I was starting my training. I ended up having to do a 4-year payback, which means the government would say, hey, we're going to support you in medical school, pay for it. And in return, when you're finished with all your training, and that's internal medicine training, we're going to have you put in a place that no other doctor will work.
The amazing thing about her work in prison is that although Karen finished paying back the government for her scholarship, she remained in the same prison as a doctor for 30 years. She did this helping the kind of people she wished to serve even as a child, the underserved, who truly needed more than anyone a sincere doctor's attention. When Karen began her career, it was during the first major outbreak of AIDS. It was then she began to see that many decisions regarding treatment of any prisoners were not simply practical, but political.
You can imagine in a prison, there's the issue of, do they work in a culinary? Now, from a medical standpoint, there's no reason they can't work in a culinary, but the warden made political decisions, like, I'm not going to allow guys who are positive to work in the culinary because then I open myself to potentially a riot, things like that.
Yeah, well, I imagine from reading your book particularly that there were a lot of decisions that were made by wardens that were political.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, it's really interesting. One of the things that I found that amazing kind of was you were very, and we'll go into this more, but you were very active in developing programs at one point, and they were very successful. And then you get a new warden, and boom, they disappear. And people couldn't even go out in the yard and have the kind of recreational freedom they had before, right? I mean, so the extreme. There were extraordinarily extremes depending on the sort of temperament of the wardens, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. When you look at my career, which is 30 years, I lived through about 9 or 10 wardens. And they, let's just say, mindset-wise and politically, they swung from the light to the dark and then back and forth again. And when you had a warden who had what I will call a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, in the growth mindset, they had the belief system that, well, can we change things to improve? And we are willing to take risks. And we believe that people can change with exposure to education and vocation and work. I enjoyed working under their leadership. When I had a warden who had a fixed mindset, who felt we've always done it that way, don't tell me we can do anything better, and no one ever changes, and if their mouth is moving, they're lying, and they've got nothing coming. That was miserable to work under when you're a doctor.
In this program, Karen deals with the HIV problem today, but also with other major challenges in our correction system. For instance, in her own state of Nevada, it was discovered that more than half the people who have been returning to prison in that state were returning over technical violations of parole. On a much broader level, Karen relates that up to the surge in the prison population in the 1970s, our incarceration rates were comparable to other countries. After that, they were sometimes 5 times as much or more. We further discuss the fact that 1 out of 9 prisoners have life sentences today, and that there has been a dramatic growth over the years in the length of sentences. In this first interview, we'll gain a much more real-world knowledge of the prison system that you generally gain from mainstream media. It is no wonder that compassionate people like Karen have taken up the cry for reform. Join us today for an exciting discussion with Karen Gedney, MD, author of 30 Years Behind Bars, currently a speaker giving her informed view as how to create a better, more just, more effective prison system today.